Hey guys, I am live. Yes, it was a crazy week last week, and I was in hurricane area, and it was super windy, and things were blowing up the place, and the connection that I had was not good. So today I am back. I have a brand new computer, and looks like it's actually working. That's great. Hi, Linda. So just wait for a few other people to jump on board here, and I will get started with this week's training. I'm actually a minute early, which is a really cool thing. So I've been traveling for the last week, and it has been so much information that has just been filling me up and making me feel super charged up. And I spent about 3.5 days with members of the network. And these are the high level 7 and 8 figure business owners that I am now collaborating with this year. And we had a mastermind that was like none other that I have actually ever attended. So I'll be sharing a lot about that in the High Ticket Sales Collaborative group. So if you're listening to this and you are listening to it on my Janet Clark Facebook page, then you may want to make sure that you join the High Ticket Sales Collaborative, which is our free group. And we do a lot of training in there. We do all kinds of fun stuff in there. But I'll be actually introducing a lot of the members of the network within that group and talking about all of the different ways that you can serve at a higher level, whether you're a coach or a salesperson. So that will be a lot of fun stuff coming up later, probably starting next week, actually. So in the meantime, I am going to, you want to be a fly on the wall. Yeah, and this was probably one of the few events that I went to where there was absolutely no recording taking place. And it was all extremely private and intimate between the people in the group to create a really sort of safe environment for people. And I appreciated that. One of the things that I've been considering and realizing is that, there's the people we all know about, the high flyers who love to build their own empire, and they want to be the known face in their industry. And, that's fine. There's, those people who like to claim that they're the rich and famous and broadcast that they're part of the rich and famous. But then there's this whole level of people who are out there doing amazingly great work in the world, who are adding super huge value, and they kind of fly under the radar screen a little bit. And they like it that way. And I really appreciate that, because I realize how many people are really doing great work and making a lot of money doing it, changing lives, impacting lives, and starting to create this movement within our industry to really elevate the level of integrity. And, some of the people who have, that are well known, I'm not saying that they don't have integrity, but there are out there that spend their whole time promoting themselves and really don't get their clients the results that they should be. So this network that I belong to, we're all about like changing that. And there really isn't anybody in there who's looking to become world famous as far as, being recognized as the top guru, but they all are looking to become one of the top impact value providers in their industry. So it's really cool. I know you like being anonymous, Linda, but anyway, I appreciate that you're on here today. So for those of you who are just joining, this is our weekly sales training series. And sometimes we're talking just about sales. Sometimes we're talking about, how to improve the results that you're getting in selling your own coaching program. And sometimes we're just talking about sales in general as it applies to the whether you're a coach selling your own program or you are a salesperson who is selling for somebody else. So our subject today is one that I'm sure is near and dear to everybody's heart if you're doing any type of high ticket sales, and that is eliminating objections. So quickly, I am Janet Clark. I am the CEO and founder of the Freedom Shift, and I have a membership program which I call the High Ticket Sales Alliance. Primarily what I do there is connect high ticket sales people who are heart-centered and professional with coaches, consultants, and service providers who are offering transformational programs. And at the end, I'll tell you how you can get in touch with me if you want to hear more about that. But anyway, back to our discussion today, which is all about the eliminating objections front. So specifically, I want to take this nuance of what a lot of people call overcoming objections, and I want to shift that thinking to we're not overcoming the objections, we're actually eliminating them before they come up. So the question I would ask you is, at what stage of the sales process do you believe you should be handling objections? Now, a lot of salespeople would answer that with, well, it comes at the end, right? After you make the offer. But what I'm here to tell you is that in order to eliminate these objections, you have to handle them before you ever lay out your offer to the prospect. So let me tell you a quick story about how I really got good at this. So in between, after I left my corporate work, I wasn't exactly sure which direction I wanted to go, but I knew that I wanted to start working with independent individual business owners in some capacity, and I wanted to be on my own. So I did a little stint selling health insurance to small business owners. And when I say small business, I mean like solopreneurs, right? So people who maybe had a consulting company, maybe they had a plumbing company, they did landscaping, but in some way it was a decision that they were really making, not so much for a bunch of employees that they had, but for themselves and their own family. So health insurance wasn't something that a business owner was going to make a decision about in a vacuum, right? They were going to have to make this decision with their spouse, because in most cases, these people had families. And it was the families that were really struggling with the cost of traditional health insurance. And so the program that I was representing at the time, now this was a while back, things have certainly changed in that arena, but the programs, usually it was a family decision. So both spouses had to be involved in the decision making. So what I found out was that there were certain objections that were going to come up all the time, right? The same things are always going to come up. So in the case of the health insurance, the things that would come up would obviously the price, what's the cost of the coverage. And then there were things like, okay, if I'm taking medications, is this going to cover the types of medications that I have to take? Because as we know, a lot of people take a lot of drugs in our society, unfortunately. What is their attachment to their current carrier? So, I mean, I would find people that just loved Blue Cross, there was just like, they couldn't even envision anything that didn't have the name Blue Cross in it, or, whatever the one of choice was. And I know you Canadians out there probably don't relate to this, but there's a point to the story. But anyway, so there was the thing about the attachment to the carrier, and sometimes it had to do also with any kind of a chronic condition. So if somebody had a chronic health condition and they were seeing all kinds of specialists and they had already been diagnosed with some major problem, then those things were disqualifiers. So what I realized was that I didn't really particularly like the model of the way that I had to sell this, because I had to go out to people's houses, and usually it was in the evening, and usually it was dark, and I crazy about, first of all, I'm not a night person. I'd rather work in the day and early in the morning. So it was hard for me to kind of get motivated to go out in the evening after dinner. And then I had to deal with their dogs and their cats and their kids and their dirty kitchens and, smelled like food and all this kind of thing. So it wasn't exactly my kind of thing. But I did love the solution that I was offering, and I really did know that it was enhancing people's lives. Like, it was a really good solution. So for that part of it, I liked it. For all those other things, you probably realize why I don't still do that, or why I didn't do it for very long. But anyway, the moral of the story is that I recognized that I did not want to go drive to these people's houses, sit with them at their kitchen table, and lay out a solution for them if, in fact, they had these objections were going to come out. So I figured out that I had to get these objections out on the table prior to ever getting in my car and driving out to their house. So I came up with this little process where I would know how to weave these objections that would come up into my questions in the fact-finding part of it. And so I actually I kind of made the sales process start on a phone conversation. And very often I would ask for both people to be involved in that conversation. So I would do that so that I could find out, like, if I come out to your house and I do show you this solution and I lay out this process and this program for you, are you going to be willing to write me a check for the first month's premium? And so anyway, long and the short of it is, it started to work. So I ended up being able to get a lot of calls done, qualify people really well, and every time I went out on a sales call, and I would say like 90% of the time, I left there with a check. And within 3 months, I was the #1 salesperson in this office of 100 agents. Now, here's somebody who knew nothing about selling to an individual, selling health insurance or whatever. And so people would say to me, how did you do that? Like, how did you get so good at this? And, I literally would say, look, I don't go on a sales call if it's not going to close. Like, I just, if they're not going to buy, I don't go. So in other words, how do we translate this now into selling a high ticket program? Well, we have the heart flow sales process, and many of you know what that is. And if you I teach it here each and every week. But in this heart flow conversation, the biggest and most important thing is, how you ask questions. And so what you want to be able to do is you want to identify what the common objections you're getting are, and be able to get those things out on the table and answered prior to getting past that ask stage, right? So we have the part where we're asking the questions, and then we have the next segment where we're kind of recapping and teaching them something and getting kind of figuring out where they're at before we ever lay out the offer. So let me make sure I'm on track here with my notes. So I got that done. Okay, I'm good. All right, so what are the common objections that you probably hear a lot with a high ticket sales? Well, okay, I can't afford it. Obviously, we're selling a high ticket program, so money is always going to be something that we have to overcome or eliminate as an objection. This isn't really the right time for me to do this. I don't know if I have the time to invest in doing this program right now. I'm not sure that my spouse or my business partner will be on board with this. So I'm going to have to check with them. Well, you don't want to find that out at the end, okay? I'm not sure that I've really done my homework yet. And so, there's a couple of other programs that I'm looking at. So I'm not really, I'm just trying to get more information on this call. So these are some of the things that are going to come up if you do the traditional way of selling, right? And you don't hit these objections up front, and now you lay out your offer, and all of a sudden you're going to start hearing these things. Now, it's possible for you to actually diffuse these before you ever make the offer. But if you don't do that, because these are all valid, okay? These are absolutely thoughts that are going through people's minds and fears that are coming up for them. And so if you don't diffuse these and get them out on the table ahead of time, then you are doing a disservice to yourself or the coach or consultant you're selling for and to the prospect. Because remember, these people are looking for a solution. They are looking for someone to stand in the fire with them and help them to figure out if this is going to be a good thing for them. They want you to help them to make this decision. Okay? So when you think about all of these questions that people come up with, the typical objections, think of it like an iceberg, right? So you've got this iceberg, and here's the water line, and or you can see this part. This is what they're saying, but there's a whole bunch of stuff under here that you actually can't see. And so you have to be able to dig a little with them in order to figure out like what's underneath these that they're saying, because it comes down to the truth of what they're really trying to get at. And a lot of times they're not even sure what it is. So what is an objection? It's actually the reason why they are hesitant, right, to move forward. And there can really only be two reasons why they're hesitant. And the first is they don't know if the program works or trust that that coach is the right person to actually help them to find, with a solution that will work. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, will it work for me? So they already know it works. They've seen evidence that the program works. They've already have this feeling of know, like, and trust with the coach that's delivering, if that may be you or the person you're selling for. However, they have some question within their mind as, well, is it going to work for me? Okay, so right at the beginning of the heart flow sales process, you're going to find out the answer to number one. Like, do they know the program works and trust that this coach can deliver a program that works? Okay, and so if you can get that out of the way right up in the beginning, then you can move on. Now, what happens if you determine right up front that no, they really don't know anything about the program, and they're not really even sure much about you, if you're the coach, or the coach, right? So how could this be the case? Well, in a lot of cases, it really comes back to marketing, right? So if, like, I was talking to somebody this morning, and my question, to this person is, well, what do you know about me? Right? Well, he happened to have watched my 30-minute webinar. He's been following me in my Facebook group. He's seen some of these training programs. So he knows that I have a program that works. He knows that I connect, that I have high-level connections, and that I connect those salespeople who come into the High Ticket Sales Alliance with those coaches and consultants. And so he's confident that I do that, right? He knows the program works. Okay, so the real question is, well, is it going to work for me? And then we had to go into his story, right? And talk about his background, how he came to be on this call, what he's done in the past, what's worked for him, what's not working for him. So it's a total conversation. Okay, so let's go back to this point of, if I said to him, well, what do you know about me? And he said, nothing really, right? So sometimes it's so-and-so referred me to you, but I don't know anything about you. Have you ever seen my webinar? No. Are you in my Facebook group? No, right? Do you know anybody that's actually been in my program? No, somebody just told me that, you have a program. Okay, if that's the case, then more than likely that sale is not going to close on that conversation. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't eventually close, but what it means is that there is no point in you trying to get to understand, will it work for them when they don't even know it works? So in that case, there's probably going to have to be a second call with some information that's going to happen in the interim where they're going to actually be able to get a little bit more educated about the program. So that's a marketing piece of it. And right, so those are the questions. So in every one of these sales conversations, right, we have to kind of identify the who, the what, the why, and the how. So those have to be answered for the prospect. So right up front, you're going to figure out, who is this coach right for them, right? What is this program going, does it work? And so if those things are not answered, it really doesn't make sense to move on. But you can make strides at that point to do some educating of that person, talking about the program, but more than likely, they're going to need a little more information. Okay, now let's assume that you decide that, they don't know enough. So you're probably going to end your first call right there, and you're going to give them an assignment, right? You're going to send them to the Facebook group. Maybe you're going to have them read a book if you've written a book. Maybe you're going to send them to a webinar, some sort of a free training program, but you want them to become a little bit more educated in the program itself. So let's assume that, yes, they do have a good knowledge of the program and they have heard about it. They've seen the testimonials, they've watched some videos, they know who you are, they feel good about that, and they can articulate that information back to you. So part of when I start a sales conversation, say I'm selling for Ryan Levac in the Ask method. So the first thing I'm going to say is, well, what do you know about Ryan? And, how familiar are you with the Ask method? And more than likely, they're going to sell me on how great he is and why they're on this call. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. So you want to know that up front. So let's assume that they do know that. And, you get a good feel for, yeah, they get it, that the program is a good one. So now you want to start digging into what's going to be in their way then. So they already know that the program is good. So, this is the thing of, will it work for me? Now, this is where the typical things are going to get in the way. Okay. So is the timing right? Is there an issue with money? Is there someone else that they're going to have to confer with and bring into this decision? Is there some sort of a fear of failure because they've already been burned, which in our industry, unfortunately, has now become the norm. So over and over again, we're going to find out that people have already invested money and did not get the results they thought they were going to get. And in a lot of cases, the coaches, don't really care. Which is not the case in the networks and the masterminds that I join. So we are on a mission to change that so that people are getting value, and that's what it's all about. But we have to find out where people are at. And then there's these people who are just not at the point where they're ready to make a decision. And so you want to know that before you actually get to a point where you're going to make them an offer. So think about it this way. You are qualifying and qualifying and qualifying, just like I did when I had to sell that health insurance. And I was highly motivated to do a really good job of pre-qualifying because for me, it meant, sometimes I had to drive an hour to get to these people. And, sometimes it was winter and it was dark and cold and these people didn't even leave their light on outside their house, and I'm driving up and down these neighborhood streets trying to figure out how to get to these people's houses. And so I wanted to eliminate having to do that at all costs, right? I didn't want to have to go out there and do my presentation and show them the offer if in fact I wasn't feeling really confident that they were ready to make a buying decision. So try to have that in your mind when you're actually doing your questioning so that you don't move on in a hurry to make an offer if in fact you haven't figured out if they're qualified. So you want to start obviously by digging into their why, why is this important to them? And I did a training about this. So, you can go back and look at the different trainings that I've sent out. And if you don't if you can't find it, just message me. But really talking about how that why is always at least 3 layers deep. It's never the obvious thing that they tell you that it is. So anyway, I'm not going to dig too far into that one right now, but you really want to get into their why, like what is motivating them to want to solve this problem, get to the next level um, of their transformation. And then you want to start asking all the how questions, right? Like, how have you tried to resolve this in the past? How has that worked out for you? Like, how have you succeeded so far? Like, what's worked? And then how have you kind of been stymied in getting to the next level that you want to get at, right? What's in the way? And how important is it for you to fix that now? Like, what's your timing for that? So each one of these questions has multiple layers also. So you want to dig deep to the point where it's almost like they're telling you, I am just so ready, right, to have a solution for this. And, I've tried these other things and they haven't worked. And I see this program and I know it works. And so I really want to figure out for myself. Right? So you dig a little bit into what you think is in the way. Is it time? Is it money? Is it a spouse? Is it fear of failure? Is sometimes fear of success? What would I do if it actually worked? That's a good one to delve into with people. And so, the more questions you can ask people, the more they're going to open up. And here's the place where you really want to bring up the money. So you want to start having conversations about money, anchoring kind of your price point in this ask section. Because what you don't want to do is wait to discuss money until after you've put the price out there. So how do you do that? Well, part of that is really starting to talk about value, right? And putting a value. And you can do that by like the obvious thing of, if it's a business program, the value is easy because you're talking about, okay, how much do you want to in revenue as a result of being in this program? And, so say somebody says, I want to generate $100,000 and the investment is $10,000. Well, that's a 10x return. So it's very easy to see why that $10,000 would be better invested in themselves and in their business growth than, sitting in the bank somewhere. So you want to get into the value. Now, if it's something other than a financial gain, because there's a lot of different ways you can get a return on your investment, right? ROI does not have to be dollar for dollar. So in some cases, just creating time to be with your family, being able to actually have time to go on a vacation, right? Or to be able to find peace with a spouse or peace in a relationship with a child, right? Could be a parenting program, or to find more purpose in your life, which a lot of people do with the life coaching and energy healing and all of these different kinds of programs. There's a cost to not having those things resolved. And so you want to start valuing that. Maybe they're missing work. Maybe they're missing out on experiences that they're never going to be able to get back with a young child. Maybe they don't want to be going off to work with a baby in the house, right? And so there's a way that you can offer them an alternative to that. So there's so many different ways to value whether it's their time, their peace of mind, their saving a relationship. And there's also, so that's ROI. What's the return going to be for this investment? And how do you value that, what you would actually get as a result? And then there's what Alex Mandossian taught me, which is called COI, which is the cost of inaction. Like, how much is it going to cost you if you don't fix this? How do you value that? And so when you can really get into these money conversations up front, you're anchoring them to a price. So if somebody says, well, if I was going to make $100,000 this year, or if I could have actually implemented this last year and made $100,000, it's already cost me $100,000 not to do it, right? So there's a simple one. We have a coach that we sell relationship reboot program, right, for marriages. Well, what's it going to cost you if you have to get divorced? Right? In the US, the cost of a divorce is $16,000. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you have to have two different households that have to be supported now. And there's alimony and child support and all these other things that go along with it. And, then there's the heartbreak for breaking up the family and the cost of counseling for the kids. And I mean, so many other things, right, that get involved in sometimes being able to find a solution. So all of these conversations are important to have. And when you have these conversations very openly and candidly, a heart flow process with people, you're going to figure that out whether you should even give them the offer. So in some cases, it actually doesn't make any sense to even make the offer to people because they've already told you that they don't have any money. They're not intending to make any kind of accommodations to solve the problem. And you can dig a little bit with that, but if you get a clear, I'm not ready for this, then don't give them an offer. So hopefully that helps, right? Because it doesn't serve you to put an offer out there and then try to backtrack. It's kind of like you dug a hole for yourself and now you're trying to dig yourself out of it. If these objections are coming up after the fact. So you want to be proactive. You never want to be on the defensive when you're on a call. When you can talk about these objections ahead of time, it's much less emotionally charged, because what happens is once you lay that offer out and then these objections come up, it becomes kind of like you against them, right? They're butting heads. If you do it ahead of time, it's more conversational and you're exploring it with them. Or again, what I call standing in the fire. So remember, my acronym for sales is sharing a life-enhancing solution. And your goal is to recognize that the reason this person is on a call with you is because they truly do want what you're offering. This isn't about coercion. It's not about manipulation. It's not about, trying to come up with some, slick way of saying something. It's not about fast action bonuses and, trying to get people to make a decision that is, where they're stuck in some emotional confusion. This is about really getting everything out on the table and making an offer that truly is going to enhance their life and helping them to see and feel really good when they make this decision. Because the last thing you want is somebody that gives you their credit card, hangs up the phone and says, oh shit, what did I just do? Right? That you don't want that. You want them to be like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get going, right? And they're giving you the credit card. Yeah, maybe they do feel those butterflies, but they're from excitement. They're, from this anticipation and joy, not from like, oh my God, what am I doing? I hope this, I hope someone doesn't kill me or I don't kill myself for doing this. So that's what it's all about. Remembering people love to buy, and it's our job to help them to get to that point where they can buy. And if you would like to reach out to me and have a conversation, questions answered, talk about any of this, you can always message me on Facebook, or you can go and watch my webinar, which is at thefreedomshift.com, or feel free to book a call with me, which is www.meetme.so, S as in Sam, O, /freedom shift. And so that's it for today. Come back next week at the same time, and I will be talking about some other aspect of how to do great on a high ticket sales conversation. All right, so bye for now. Thanks for showing up, and talk soon.